Well, we welcome in Roch Kubatko, who covers the Orioles for the Masson Sports. And Roch, you take a look at that montage from last year, 2022 trade deadline, where the Orioles followed the plan. Mike Elias talking about that, but they got a lot of criticism considering how competitive they were last year and on the periphery of that playoff race. How has that deadline shaped the 2023 season, and what's the plan for this year?
Yeah, I feel like there was so much heat that Mike Elias actually flew into Texas to talk to the team and kind of explain, hey, I still believe in you guys, but we're still looking ahead as well. And it really has kind of shaped this team. I mean, trading Jorge Lopez was not popular with fans for sure, an all-star closer. But one of the guys they got back was Yennier Cano, who's become a dominant all-star setup man. And Kate Povich is one of their top pitching prospects. So is Seth Johnson. It came in the Mancini three-team trade. He's on the 60-day IL, Tommy John, but he's one of their prospects. So it really has helped the shape. And by moving Mancini, they freed up that DH spot, which they still use on a rotating basis this year. And with Lopez, it allowed them to move up Felix Bautista, kind of audition him as a full-time closer. And I'd say that went pretty well. He's an all-star closer now, and he's having a historic season, the second best strikeout rate per 9 innings in MLB history. The only problem was last season, it kind of weakened the bullpen because some guys that were in lower leverage slots had to move up one as Bautista moved up, and that didn't work out well for everybody. But it really has made sense now to see what Cano's doing and what that did for Bautista and the depth they added to this talent pipeline.
And trades are like that, right? That sometimes you make a deal that nobody gets excited until you start to figure out, oh, these players can actually play, and these guys know what they're doing. And Mike Elias, Sig Mejdal, they know what they're doing there. But I guess the question is, what are our expectations for this year? Last offseason, they made moves. They bring in Adam Frazier. They bring in Kyle Gibson. They bring in Ryan O'Hearn. And I remember talking to Mike Elias. He said, well, these were significant acquisitions for our team. And I kept thinking, so significant for me was Aaron Judge, Carlos Correa, Xander Bogaerts. But yet these guys have all impacted the team. But how aggressive are they going to be at the deadline this year?
Yeah, it could be very similar. They're not big, splashy moves, but they're always looking to upgrade. And I feel like they're still looking at their bullpen, which, again, is not going to be a big, splashy move. But they want to get stronger in that middle inning area because they've got the two dominant guys in the back end that we talked about. But getting them the ball, getting them a lead has been a little tricky at times. Mike Bauman's done great converting from starter to a shorter spurt relief guy. And they brought in Fujinami, of course, but they're still testing him to see what they actually have as a rental. So I think they're still going to address the bullpen. And this could end up being like a 2014 situation. You'll recall they didn't make a big move for the rotation, so they went out and got Andrew Miller, and they shortened the games even more with another dominant reliever. I think they would love to do that. And they will look at the starter market still. They have been. But it's going to have to be a real difference maker atop the rotation and somebody they're comfortable with where they don't have to give up too many of their prospects for, because there's no reason to go ahead and bring in another back end of the rotation guy. It would have to be a real difference maker. Then you figure out, how do we make room? We go with a 6-man. Tyler Wells has already exceeded his career high in innings. His last 2 outings, he struggled, didn't get nearly as deep as he had been, but he said he felt strong. Do you provide more rest for him? How do you make that work? But I really think they're really focused more at this point, if you were ranking them, on bullpen to strengthen it, to shorten those games and aid the rotation.
All right, so I've got an impact starting rotation guy that might be a fit for them. He pitches in Los Angeles with the Angels. Shohei Ohtani, he certainly would go to the front of that rotation. And they're a farm system that has the prospects to do it. They have 8 position players on the top 100 prospect list. And they don't have a lot of controllable pitching, but they do have Grayson Rodriguez. You mentioned Tyler Wells. There's a deal to be made there. They could make the deal. How much will they be in on this? Because there is some speculation they're at least kicking the tires on Ohtani.
Yeah, that's the due diligence thing, which Mike Elias openly doesn't give us a lot of information on what's going on behind closed doors, but he will listen on anybody. He will make calls on anybody. That's what you do. That's front office malpractice if you refuse to do that. Look, I'm hesitant, the whole never say never thing. Many years ago, I had a former GM tell me with the Sammy Sosa rumors, shoot him down with the biggest bullet you have. It's not happening. And I'm like, well, I'm hearing. I don't care what you're hearing. It's not happening. I went on Chicago radio, told them it wasn't happening. And later that night, they traded for Sammy Sosa. So I'm still scarred from that experience. That was a long time ago. But this one would really surprise me because it would totally go against what Mike Elias has done, what he would have to give up from a farm system they've worked so hard to build up for a 2+ month rental, and that's all he would be as a rental. He's not staying. They're not re-signing him. He's not staying in Baltimore. I don't think they would do that. The cost would just be much too high And also keep in mind, it wouldn't be an acquisition to get them in the playoffs. They're already a playoff team. It would take a monumental collapse to not make it. It's just a question of whether they win the division or they're a wild card. So you would have to win a World Series or that trade's a bust because they're already in the postseason at this point. Yeah. I don't see it happening. I do see him listening, saying, hey, what would it take, whatever. And they, on paper, yes, they have the pieces of their farm system, but I would be really, really surprised if they were seriously aggressively pursuing Ohtani.
You know, Roch, when you rebuild, sometimes your position players are ahead of your pitchers are ahead of your position players. They've got 8 position players in the MLB.com's top 100 prospect list. The idea of maybe moving some position players for a pitcher, Jazz Chisholm for Zach Gallen trade, Tyler O'Neill for Marco Gonzalez trade. We've seen some of those in the past with pitcher for position player. How about that concept of a potential trade for the Orioles?
They could. They have so much depth, especially in the infield and the farm system. And they've got, the outfielders have been built up as well. And yes, they're definitely ahead of the pitchers if you look at any top 100 or their top 30 lists from different outlets. They've got that kind of depth, and they're not going to all be able to come to the majors. So they're going to have to create room for some of these guys, whether, you go ahead and you trade some of the other prospects to make room for them to come in, or you trade them. You could trade some, a veteran that's on the staff, on the roster right now to try and create room. You can't fit them all on a 26-man roster. So there are some guys down below who look like they're blocked right now, and you could package a few of them. But again, it depends on, how many another team's asking for. They all see the depth that's in the system now. But it would totally make sense to take a couple of these guys, let's say a couple of the infielders who right now would be blocked, and say, okay, we'll package them for a guy. And they could go ahead and if they want to get that starter, and then you keep your fingers crossed that you don't get burned too badly. Also, I still remember the Glenn Davis trade with Steve Finley and Harnish and Schilling. That one, but that's going way back. But those are still the trades where you kind of keep your fingers crossed that you don't end up regretting later. But they do have so much depth and guys blocked right now, these young prospects. They're going to have to create room somehow because there's a logjam.
Well, I'll tell you what, as a former general manager, you made the hair on my neck stand up with one of those bad trades that can certainly happen at this time of year. Roch, thanks for giving us time. Great to get your perspective on the Orioles. All the best, safe travels, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Steve.